Do you ever wonder how great leaders in the community make things happen? When they encounter new, unexpected challenges like a pandemic, how do they continue to successfully make an impact? Welcome to That Sounds Terrific, the podcast that connects you with these amazing people. Get insights on what they do to meet their goals, find out how you can help them in their mission, and learn their methods so you can be more successful at what you do. Welcome to That Sounds Terrific with host Nick Koziol.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of That Sounds Terrific. Today, I have Paul Kirch coming and crossing lines here. We have a person coming from That Sounds Terrifying over to That Sounds Terrific because of the terrific things he's also doing in the world. So welcome to the show, Paul.
Hey, thanks, Nick. Glad to be here, buddy. This is going to be exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited to be talking to you. And, there's not too many guests that have made this leap. So, congrats. I mean, the other show's a little a little shorter in the number of episodes, but it's cool.
It was fun though, and I never get to talk about that story of a haunted office I worked out of, and so it's really neat being able to share that with you and your co-host, and now being on here. I'm just honored to be a part of this.
Yeah, well, we're honored to have you, and for those that don't listen to That Sounds Terrifying, give it a listen, and check out Paul's episode. It's pretty cool or scary. But yeah, Paul, like I know we've talked a number of times already about some of the things that you do, but why don't you give us kind of a grand overview of Boss Academy and everything that you do?
Yeah, so Boss Academy started as a radio show in Dallas that I hosted back in 2014, and it was called Boss Academy Radio, and it was a drive time show, a lot of fun. Boss always stood for business ownership success strategies, and in 2015 I also launched a podcast with the same brand, and in 2017 was very fortunate to end up on a top 10 business podcast list. A lot of success with it, but unfortunately I was going through a divorce and I had to focus on my kids, so I put the show on hold. And then fast forward to 2021, I brought Boss Academy back, not as a podcast, but as an online community. And we've been running a weekly call and supporting small business owners since then. It's been just an amazing experience.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And, like I can totally relate to these kind of groups because back when I lost my position and I started kind of a career support group, and those weekly meetings were like so important to me.
Yeah.
So kind of, can you talk a little bit about that experience and like what to expect and if you're coming to those meetings?
Yeah, well, so I came out of the pandemic. I was still dealing with the fallout from the divorce and being a single father, and then the pandemic hit, and all my clients, I have a digital marketing agency, and a lot of my clients were really small clients, so they ended up being very fearful and stopped paying their bills, and it was a tough time. And so I came out of it going, man, I need to get back in a better frame of mind. And I'd, for years, been a part of really good masterminds, and I thought, well, maybe I need to get back involved with this mastermind I was a part of for a couple of years, and a friend of mine said, well, you've always wanted to bring Boss Academy back online as a community. Why don't you just launch your own? And I thought, well, that's a great idea. And so I started Boss Academy out of kind of a selfish need of wanting to get reconnected with people and find a support network, and I was hosting these weekly calls, and people would show up, and first week we had 3, and then 5, and then it kept growing from there. And I kept thinking, well, gosh, I get done with the meeting. Was that even good? Did anybody get anything out of it? But then I started hearing feedback, and I started hearing about the collaboration and I brought in really good speakers, and we started building an on-demand content platform where we could store all of our speaker content, and the feedback just ended up kind of blowing me away and very humbling. So now we have this weekly call that, when we have speakers come in, the topic is often centered around something very business oriented. When we don't have speakers, I always have topics that we dive into. And the whole goal is just to enrich our experience as entrepreneurs and find ways of being successful. And I can tell you that I don't have all the answers, and most people in our community don't have all the answers, but together it's amazing what we can accomplish. So, and where it says Phoenix Fridays on my backsplash here, if you're seeing the video, it says together we rise to greatness. And I've found that that's the strength is is together we are much stronger and we
Hmm.
accomplish more.
Yeah.
And plus, staring at the same four walls every day, working from home, as many Zoom calls as you might be on, you're often not building real deep connections. But in Boss Academy, that's what it's turned into, is a place where we've people that keep coming week after week just build amazing friendships and collaborations. We've had companies launch out of it. We've had co-authored books and a lot of really great things. So anyway, that's kind of my long-winded answer to your short question, but it's been amazing.
Yeah. Well, it's a good answer. I mean, I love the together we rise to greatness, Phoenix rising. I think that that's great symbolism. And I think you're absolutely right. I mean, no one person knows it all. And providing an opportunity for a group to come together as a community and support each other is super important. And
Yeah.
it sounds like terrific. I mean, so Paul, how does one get, involved in this group? What do you gotta do?
Well, we do have an application process for people that want to join, but really, quite frankly, if you're interested in joining, you can reach out to me and you can schedule time with me at bookwithpaul.com or reach out to me at paul@paulkirch.com. But if you're interested in becoming a part of it and checking out a meeting, we're happy to invite you in as a guest. But ultimately, we're really seeking people that are purpose driven. If you're in it just for yourself and you're all about, who can I connect with so I can make a few dimes, it's probably not the group for you. But if you're
Mhm.
willing to share your expertise as well as learn from others, it's an amazing place to grow. But it's funny, Nick, because when I started it, my goal was to make this just a resource rich environment. And so I started bringing in partners and bringing in tools and all these resources. We recently went through an exercise where a woman that's a member, she has a company called Pro Video Pages. She's amazing. And she went around and started interviewing our members, asking them about their
Mhm.
experience and gathering testimonials. But the one thing that kept coming up was it wasn't about the tools, it wasn't about the resources. They love those things. But the thing that kept them coming back was that they were building friendships. They had people they could trust. They had sounding boards. They had support. And so it's really been interesting because what I thought was the draw ended up being less the draw, and more of the draw was the fact that we're just supporting each other.
Mhm. It's always awesome to kind of find those little surprises along the way of things
Yeah.
that you didn't expect and are helping other people. My wife's a teacher, and I've been in education for a number of years, and it's really cool when somebody comes back and said, "Hey, you had a significant impact on my life, and here's why," kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So it's cool when those things trickle back. And I think I know exactly who you're talking about, and actually she's a future guest on this show, so
Yeah,
that's awesome.
exactly. My father was a teacher for 32 years, and it's really interesting because you have a father who he wasn't the I love you guy. He never really expressed love to his kids, but he was always there. He never missed a sporting event. He was very dedicated as a father. So at his funeral, I talked about how he gave good presents, not presents as in gifts, but
Mhm.
presents as always being there. And I told some stories about him, but at his funeral, a lot of his students that he had taught. I mean, now my dad was in his 80s when he died, so his students were, they were people in their 50s and 60s, and
Mhm.
it was really interesting that these are adults that came up and were talking about how patient my father was, how kind he was, how supportive he was, how many of them had built businesses around the things that my father taught them. And my brothers and I looked at each other and we're going, "This is the same dad that was our dad,"
Our dad did
because we
this.
didn't see that side of him always. And so it was amazing that at his funeral we learned something about him that growing up, he grew up in that generation where he had a tough love upbringing, and with us he was never abusive or mean, but he just wasn't the I love you guy. My mom
Mhm.
was over the top I love you, but my dad was just he was a guy who gave great presents. But we just learned so much about his character and the sacrifice he made. So the fact you said that about your wife, I mean, I totally get that. And I think that there's something to be said about you often when you're helping people, nurturing them through teaching and educating them, supporting them, sometimes people see a side of you that is not always seen when you're close to them in another setting.
Yeah.
He did those things as a father, but often he was so busy working and doing all those things that we didn't always see that side of him. But it was a blessing to see that.
Yeah. That sounds like amazing. Just to hear those stories about your dad and the impact that he made, and you know, um, kind of cool to have that little window to kind of see like
Yeah.
what he was outside of being just the dad, right? We often forget that our parents are more than just our parents, our mom and dad, that they, they have other things that they've done in their life. So that's
Well, when I told you I spoke at his funeral, so one of the stories I told, my father was in the Air Force during the Korean War, and he was based in Newfoundland up in Canada because during the Cold War they could fly the B-36 bomber across Russian soil and back without refueling. So if they ever had to drop bombs, they could do that. So he was based up there, and he was always very proud of his military service. But my father came down with dementia when I was living in Texas, and he was back in Nebraska. I had a brother that moved his family in with him because it got bad to the point where he didn't know who anybody was, and he thought my brother was his best friend, and he didn't know it was his son. And I came to visit, and my father had gotten to the point where he really had no clue who I was, and my brother was helping him walk to the bathroom, and I was behind him talking to him, and all of a sudden he turns around and yells at me to get out of his house because he thought it was somebody breaking into his house, and it was really hard. So when he was about a week away from passing away, he was in this memory care facility, and at that point he'd lost his ability to talk. It sounded like he tried to talk, but it just came out as gibberish, and it was really sad and hard to see. But my brother worked at that facility and had walked off to take care of something, and I'm standing there with my nephew, and my nephew and I look at each other, and we're like, I don't even know what to say to this guy. This guy doesn't know who I am. And it's like, I love my dad, but it's like, I just felt like I had nothing to talk to him about. And all of a sudden I'm like, Dad, I remember a story you used to tell us. And so I said, do you remember that time when you were up in Newfoundland in the Air Force? And so General Curtis LeMay was a very, had a reputation for being a rough general. He was part of the Strategic Air Command. He oversaw that. And my father was up there in this base working in the office pool typing up, and all of a sudden this guy comes in the building with these eagles on the collar, and my dad pretended he didn't see him and kept his head down. And he always told us the story about how he got into an altercation with General LeMay, but he got the last word in. And I'm like, okay. I said, so he said, I'm typing away, and all of a sudden this guy comes in, and I pretend I didn't see him, and he comes over and he rips me up one side and down the other, and he's yelling at me, and he goes, but I won. I got the last word in. And I said, well, what was the last word, Dad? He goes, yes, sir. And it was a very funny story. And, growing up, we loved hearing his stories.
Yeah.
But here's a guy who has dementia, can't talk, doesn't know who anybody is. And that moment, all of a sudden his eyes cleared up and he giggled a little bit. And he remembered the punchline, and he remembered that story. And in that moment, he remembered me. And it was like the greatest gift, that I walked away from that. A few days later, he passed away. But man, what a blessing. Because here's a guy that I felt like I had no chance of getting to know again. And in that moment, we reconnected.
I'm glad that you had that moment. And,
Yeah, me too.
The Alzheimer's Association is a place that I work for. We've had them on the show. So anybody that needs help or support, urge to go to alz.org or call their number 1-800-272-3900, because they will give you some support in that area for sure, kind of help you go through that. But you shouldn't have to go through that alone. But it's one of those diseases and things that you often feel like you're alone or lost, even as a caregiver. So,
yeah, dementia is tough. I don't know the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia, to be fair, but I will tell you that I learned a lot from that experience. But it scares you. And then here I am in my mid-50s, and I'm like, I forget somebody's name. I'm like, oh my God, so you start to think, is it happening to me? So there's a lot that comes with it. But anyway, I didn't mean to get us off track, but it was a
that's
relevant
important
story.
No, I think stories are, really important in what we do here. And but yeah, you're right. So like Boss Academy,
Hmm.
we were talking about how you get involved, but you also alluded to some, like, we were talking about surprises. So like what are some other things that, like, have come out of Boss Academy that you weren't expecting, um that are, like, sort of those pleasant surprises?
Well, it's funny because when I started it, I didn't want to make it about me. I wanted to make it about the members, and to a fault. I really kind of didn't showcase I didn't make it about Paul Kirch as a coach or a business leader. I bring a lot of that into the meetings, obviously, when I talk about topics that I want to learn about or that I think are important. But it was less focused on me and more on the members. And over time, I learned that that was a mistake, because if you're leading, people want to know that they're being led by somebody that has strength and skill set. So, but the people that are in there that I've gotten to be close with, I've built some of my closest friends come from Boss Academy. Now, this is a virtual meeting. I've never met any of them in person with one exception. There's one person I've met in person. Everyone else has been all virtual connections, and it's shocking how close I've become with them. Like, they're
Mhm.
sounding boards, they're friends, they're people that if I had a need, I could pick up the phone and call them, and they would drop everything for me. And that was unexpected. I really didn't think that would be the result. And I know I'm not the only one who feels that way. And I think it's very special for a online community because it's when you're dealing with virtual, you're dealing with Zoom. That's not always the outcome.
Mhm.
And so that's been a big surprise. But the other thing, I wouldn't say it's a surprise, but coming out of the radio show and the podcasting, I knew I was resourceful. I knew I was good at securing good speakers and guests. But I've been really taken aback by how supportive the people that come in and present are to the members and how much they are willing to step up and they don't get anything out of it. I don't let them pitch. I don't.
Mhm.
It's a no pitch environment, but they know that through their actions, people are going to want to reach out to them and work with them. And I've just been blown away at how supportive the people are. And we've got amazing sponsors, we've got amazing members,
Mhm.
and they are just continually lifting each other up. And that's been. I don't know how much of that I would say is a pure surprise, but it's been a blessing.
Well, that's very good to hear. That's awesome. So, um, I was going to ask next, like, what is next, right? So, like, you've gotten this great
Hmm.
community together, and I'm sure you have some future plans. Where would you like to see Boss Academy go?
And we're working on it right now. So Boss Academy currently in its current form has been mostly coaches, consultants, and solopreneurs.
Mhm.
We are adding another group, which will be companies that'll have between 5 and 50 employees, which ends up being somewhere in that range of $1 million to $10 million in revenue. And that will be a little bit different setup. So we'll have a monthly mastermind, but in addition, there'll be a course and there'll be online training that will be not just training and services that will be included in that membership to help them grow their business. And we're talking about literally adding millions of dollars in terms of revenue if somebody follows this program. And so
Mhm.
that's the next generation of this. And the people that are currently part of our weekly call, um, a lot of them already work with those types of companies, so they have solutions that can also benefit them. So there'll be a lot of really win-win scenarios created from this.
Mhm. Sounds really, really cool. I'm looking forward to that. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So what else is going on with Paul? I know you do a lot of different things.
Yeah.
What
Well,
are some
we
other things that you do?
I mentioned that there was a company that started out of Boss Academy, and I have two people in Boss Academy that are crisis management experts. Well, actually, one's a crisis communication expert, the other one's a
Mhm.
crisis management and disaster recovery expert. And on one of the calls, I brought up the idea. There was rumors that there could have been a lockdown last year again, and I said, well, what would happen if that occurred? What would that mean to your business? And it was kind of shocking how different the answers were, how people were burying their heads in the sand. And one person says, "Oh gosh, I don't even want to talk about this. If it happened again, it would kill me. It was so hard on me last time." But it made me realize that that's all the more reason we do need to talk about it. We do need to prepare for it.
Hmm.
And so the two people that I was referring to had said, "Hey, why don't we create an assessment to measure how vulnerable somebody is in terms of their business if something was to happen, like some sort of death in the family, a disruption, anything, fire, lockdown, how vulnerable are they? How much at risk are they?" And so we created this assessment as something to do for the Boss Academy members. And then from there, we actually built an assessment for corporations and hospitals and municipalities and other organizations to measure their current disaster recovery and disaster preparedness plan. And so we built a company out of it called Crisis Proof 360.
Hmm.
So that's also the other piece that sprung out of one of our meetings, and it's been just amazing. So I have two business partners, Dr. Angela Owens and Jeffrey Queen, and so we're out there talking to companies and taking them through this free assessment that is a place where they can measure where they stand, and then from there we do consultation and coaching on the back end. And then I have a digital marketing agency that I also run.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like this whole thing has been kind of a huge, think tank kind of environment that
Yeah.
it's really has sprung a lot of different things, like you were saying. Like a lot of ideas come out of, the work that you're doing. That's super cool.
Yeah, we actually refer to it as an entrepreneurial think tank, but a lot of people don't know what that means. So I've actually kind of reverted to referring to it as a roundtable because I think that's more indicative of the idea that, we get everybody involved in the conversation, which is always important. Our Friday calls, we intentionally keep the groups fairly small, under 50 people coming, so we can actually get everybody involved in the conversation in some way if they want to be involved, or some people like to be a fly on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
But in the end, the whole idea is that you come there because you want to learn and grow, but also you want to support others, and you walk away with something that really enriches your life.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this show was sort of born because of the pandemic, and part of it was talking about the pivot and like how did people get the job done, how did you
Yeah.
adjust, and trying to give them that information to others that might be trying to do the same thing, whether it's in nonprofit world and volunteering or business world. I love like that you've developed that into a whole like process, which is
Yeah.
awesome. Because for me, like the pandemic itself, like if anything kind of good could come out of it, was sort of this renaissance, and going back to my creativity and going back to like starting something like that sounds terrific,
Yeah.
to get that outlet. So having a business that will take a look at not just the entire country or world shutting down, but like look at all the different factors that could affect a business, and how prepared are we for emergencies, right?
Yeah, for
Very
sure.
important.
Yeah,
So
and I actually, I call our Friday call Phoenix Fridays for a reason. To me, it's very personal, but I came through very toxic divorce. I came through the pandemic, and I was feeling pretty broken, feeling pretty lost. I wasn't sure how to, get my confidence back. And I'd owned a sales consulting agency for years that I shut down because I just, I didn't want to travel anymore. And so I started doing more and more marketing support. So there was a lot of things that I was dealing with. And this group has really helped me find my mojo, find my path. And it's been such a blessing. So I call it Phoenix Fridays because I feel it's a place that helped me rise up from the ashes. And I know other people have experienced that as well. Now, it doesn't mean you have to be struggling to embrace what we do. It just means that no matter what you're going through the week, if you have a rough week, a rough day, and on Friday you can come be a part of this group and talk to
mhm.
people that lift you up, and you see that there's opportunity and a new way of thinking.
Mhm.
You go through the weekend ready to hit the ground running on Monday, and it's
Yeah.
it's it's been every week. It's like I have that gift.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and groups like yours are, sometimes you don't know that you're struggling. Like it's an
Yeah,
emotional thing, it's an internal thing that you don't even realize until you start talking to other like-minded individuals, and they share experience or story, and all of a sudden it like really connects with you, and you go, oh my God, I'm going through the same thing. Like, how
Yeah.
did you handle it? Right. And having that support is so important. So again, like, Boss Academy, Phoenix Fridays, I think this is a terrific way for someone to get the support that they need, even if they don't know they need it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So, and you were kind of talking about that too. You didn't realize that, this was just as much support for you, right, as it is for the members.
Yeah. Well, and it is funny, in the beginning when I started it because I really felt I needed to be a part of something that was bigger than myself, around other people. But when I once had been going for a while, I was focused on running the meetings and trying to make them a great experience, that I kind of lost sight of my benefit. And then all of a sudden I look back and I'm like going, oh my God, every week I've been growing. Every week I've had support, and I have these people that think that they give me far more credit than I deserve, the testimonials and the feedback. And, this was not meant, I didn't mean to come on here and make this commercial for Boss Academy,
Mhm.
but in terms of, that sounds terrific as the name of your show. For me, I found something that has really been transformative, and has blessed me, and the people that really embrace it beyond
Mhm.
belief. Now, we have people come in that'll attend a meeting and they walk out of it and go, that was a great conversation, great speaker, it was nice. But the ones that keep coming back are the ones that start to build the trust and the friendship, and they go, wow, this is a game changer.
Mhm.
And I'm sure you've experienced that with people, things you've been a part of too.
Yeah, I mean, again, the show here is a great opportunity for me to network, for me to get the messages from other people out here. And I know that, Boss Academy wasn't the chief reason I asked you to be on the show. It was just like, here's a
Yeah.
person that can really support others and really is into networking and like legitimately wants to help people. And that's kind of like what the show is all about. And kind of talking to like what you were just saying, the benefit to me is I get to network with the same people. I get to kind of hear the inner parts of all the things that they do, and like kind of see where I can fit in, where I can help, or maybe where
Yeah.
they can help me. So there's a selfish reason in this podcast too, but that's not why I do it, right? I do it because I want others to hear what Paul is doing, what Boss Academy is doing, what
Yeah.
other people are doing, so that they can kind of replicate that or get involved.
Well, in the end, entrepreneurship is the hardest thing I've ever done. I've been self-employed since 2009, and I've worked for companies. I worked for publicly traded companies. I've been part of corporate America. But when I went into business for myself, I remember in the beginning, it was exciting. It was fun. It's like I didn't know how creative I was, and it's like all of a sudden these amazing ideas. But there was a period where, man, it's not growing. It's like I'm not making what I was making before. How do I make this work? And you start to be bogged down. Entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart.
Mhm.
I've got people in my community that have lost family members, and when they're going through that, and somebody's in the hospital or somebody's struggling, they're so pulled away from their business starts to struggle. They don't have that W-2 paycheck to
Yeah.
support them. And so the things, your show, Boss Academy, Vistage, all these other organizations, they serve such a bigger role when somebody's really struggling. I mean, look, when things are great, it's wonderful to be a part of something and you can share how great things are going. But it's when you're really struggling and you don't want to talk about it, you're really feeling beat up inside, and you're sitting there, and all of a sudden somebody says something like, all of a sudden Nick asks me a question. I'm like, going, oh yeah, and he brings you to another perspective. And so I think we just need more of this.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I think a lot of people are just consumed by networking. But
Mhm.
networking in its own networking is important. But I'm all about how can we enrich those relationships and make it
Yeah.
something deeper.
It's the engagement, right?
Yeah.
It's what's the next step. Anyone that can connect and have a conversation, but like, how do you, build on that? And
Yeah.
I'm kind of like that, intrapreneur, with entrepreneur
Yeah.
tendencies. And that's just, maybe that's a little bit of a safety net for me because I have that full-time job. I'm doing creative things in that job, and I have a great boss who allows me the flexibility and freedoms to do that. And my job is very intertwined with networking
Yeah.
and engagement, which
Well, I
kind of
actually think
go ahead.
I think entrepreneurship is amazing. And for those that don't know what that means, I mean, it means you're working for a company full time and you're doing an entrepreneurial project on the side. And I think that is an amazing gateway and an amazing opportunity. I used to think that you couldn't really dance on both sides of the fence, but I'll be honest with you, there's something to be said for that security blanket and if you have a place that supports you and you can do both,
Hmm.
it's like the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, corporate America is not a secure, safe place for most people today.
Hmm.
Companies have really changed the way that they look at treating their staff and supporting their staff. I think there's some companies that do a great job, but a lot of really unhappy workers out there,
Hmm.
and that's why you have people springing up all the time online starting a business. And what do they normally say they are? Oh, I'm a business coach, because it's an easy segue.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, a lot of those people fail because they don't have a support network. And so what we're talking about is, how do we support those people and give them a place where they can succeed? Because entrepreneurship, it's extremely important to the future of this country
Yeah. No, I agree.
and globally.
Yeah, for sure. You're absolutely right. And especially with all the changes that, corporations, businesses, and just the way that we do business
Yeah.
is happening currently and going to happen in the future with all the technology and stuff that's coming out. So,
Yeah.
I mean, Paul, like we've talked a lot about a lot of stuff here today. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you definitely want to like highlight and share?
Well, as you asked that question, something popped into my head, and I'm just going to go with it.
Sure.
You know, I think there's a lot of people out there that are single parents trying to build a business. And I will tell you that to me is the hardest place to be. I've been self-employed since 2009, but I've only been divorced since 2000, like the end of 2016.
Mhm.
And those years from 2017 to now, minus the pandemic, I will tell you that my days are really short when the kids are here. And when the kids aren't here, I'm often going to activities or, going to concerts, going to soccer games.
Yeah.
So I don't work around the clock like I once did, or I work at night and then don't get sleep. And then I get up in the morning and I'm exhausted. So I think that there's a lot to be said about people out there that have kids, they're single parents, or even married parents that both parents work. It's like we
Mhm.
need to take care of ourselves. We need to make sure we focus on sleep. And I think about my father and the dementia. Now, there's a lot of theories on what causes dementia, but I think sleep deprivation is something that really plagues a lot of entrepreneurs. And
Mhm.
so I'm really bullish on trying to take care of our bodies as well as take care of our minds.
Yeah, that's a very, very important point. And the entrepreneurial mind is always going, always grinding, always
Yeah.
thinking of the new next thing, right? And sometimes that for me is a lot of sleepless nights because I'm like, oh, cool idea. And
Yeah.
writing it down, get excited about it, and can't go back to sleep.
Well,
Or even,
this little device here, we
yeah.
all have them in our hands, and sometimes we're consumed by them. But I will tell you that I've been trying to do a little detox from that at night and
Hmm.
sit outside, catch some fresh air, and just be away from electronics. And
Yeah.
and that's because if you're thinking, but you've got this in your hand, all of a sudden it's like, oh, I can just do a Google search, or I can, oh, I'm going to watch this YouTube short. And next thing you know, 30 minutes later, you've watched 4 videos and you're going, okay, I didn't get anything accomplished. So I think the ADHD that a lot of people experience is brought on by overuse of electronics and stimulation. And
Hmm.
I'm really focused on trying to take better care of myself and lead by a better example for my family.
Yeah.
It's
And that's
hard.
another terrific point. And not to go into the weeds on all that, but like the phone, there's been some research done where even just having it on and it's on silent that your body is still somehow interpreting and receiving the messages. So when you have it on like the bedside and you get an alert, it's
Oh, yeah.
even though it's off, you know, that whole phantom vibration in your pocket and stuff like that, that there's some research around like that your mind is perceiving some of those things that are coming in, which is just, you know,
It's interesting.
not to go back to the That Sounds Terrifying show again, but like, you know, that that you know, intuition
Yeah,
is part of what people are looking at. But no, I think what you're saying, like what you were saying, is a really great point. You need to unplug. You need to have time to kind of relax and treat your body right, and to be an example for your kids.
absolutely. And you know, then I think you just touched on something really interesting. I didn't know about that research, but it makes sense because my phone, the ringer's normally turned off at night, but I still hear little buzzes when certain apps get a message, you know, like Facebook Messenger, and you could be 100% focused on a conversation with your significant other, and all of a sudden you hear this little buzz, just a
Yeah.
slight little buzz, and it's like it takes you totally out. It's like, oh, I wonder what that was, and
Yeah.
we start to prioritize the wrong things.
Yeah. Well, Paul, I mean, I love, again, Boss Academy is great. I love the things that you're doing.
Thanks, buddy.
I want to urge my audience to reach out to Paul. He's not going to give you a sales pitch, just like he doesn't accept them into Boss Academy. He's
Yeah.
not like that at all.
To a fault. To a fault. You know, I hope that it speaks for itself.
Yeah.
You know,
No, I think it
that's-
does. I mean, based on what you shared, like again, this group sounds amazing. And I think anybody that is interested in finding a place where they can feel supported should definitely at least talk to you, and then maybe throw an application in and be a part of that. 'Cause,
Absolutely.
so thanks for being on the show, Paul. Really appreciate having you. You've been a terrific guest.
Thank you. And by the way, we're always looking for good speakers and people that want to get involved in other ways. So it's not always about membership. It's like, you know, this is meant to be a place where we can all rise up and do great things together. So,
Yeah.
Nick, thank you so much for what you do. The show is important, and your other show was a lot of fun, but this show, I think, serves a very important purpose. So thanks for all the work you do to support entrepreneurs and business people out there. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Paul. All right. Well, until next time, everyone, I've been the host, Nick Koziol, and with me with Boss Academy is Paul Kirch.
Thank you for joining us in another episode of That Sounds Terrific. Don't forget to check out the show notes and our website at thatsoundsterrific.com to find the contact information and the best ways to volunteer with the organizations that we feature. If you know someone that is doing terrific things and think they should be featured in a future episode, be sure to email us their name, contact info, and short description of what they're doing at thatsoundsterrific@gmail.com. If you like our show, give us a 5-star rating and give us some social media love by liking our Facebook page, That Sounds Terrific. Follow us on Twitter at Sounds Terrific too, and Instagram at Sounds Terrific. We love hearing your feedback on how to make our show sound even more terrific. Till next time.